David, if you turn around real quick, I have to say this. That picture over there on that dresser with the red hat.
Yes. Yes.
Doesn't that kind of look like Mark Zuckerberg in a red hat?
It does. It does.
Doesn't it?
The Zook with the pearl earring is that's crazy.
He's a time traveler. Anyway, okay.
I like it.
All right. Well, cool. I'll just get started then, just as an intro, and then everything else after this we'll cut right before, and then we'll keep the rest.
Okay.
All right. All right. Welcome everyone to a brand new edition of a whole new series of BizzTalk in the Metaverse. I've got one of my good friends and a very special guest today, David Sime, with us. David, how are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. Good to be here virtually.
Awesome. I'm glad to have you here. So David and I have been playing around in this environment for a little bit, but we're actually here today to have a discussion around the topic that the metaverse is already dead before it even started.
That was just me showing my exasperation in the form of emojis. Let's see whether I can do that in another way. Da, 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 da. I kind of disagree.
Perfect.
This is how I feel about the metaverse. It makes me want to dance, right? So yeah, it's a good question because. Well, thank you. It's a good question because there are a lot of people out there who have. Well, there's been a lot of early hype, and even the word metaverse has been arguably overused or misused or whatever. Now, don't get me wrong, language is prone to changing, but really, right. What is a metaverse? A metaverse is something which does not exist yet. So it hasn't even had a chance to become real yet, to let alone become real and die. So what is a metaverse? Well, what we are in currently is not a metaverse. This is a virtual reality environment. It's a very nice virtual reality environment. It's one of many virtual reality environments, and the advantage to this one is it's web-based. Now, web-based is key. Web-based means you don't have to download specific software or apps on your device in order to make it work. Because what's also key to a metaverse, just like a planet isn't a universe, a virtual reality platform isn't a metaverse. A metaverse is made up of many virtual reality platforms, and these virtual reality platforms have to be connected. They have to be what we refer to as interoperable. You need to be able to walk out of one and into another. And at the moment, much as I try to accidentally run into the wall, I'm not going to, that wasn't deliberate, I'm not going to be able to do that right now, although I know that we're working on that. So, just kind of move around. So, therefore, what you need is to be able to actually walk out of one into another and retain your information. And that means not just who you are, but any virtual goods that you may have bought or purchased or put together. So that just like when you walk from one store to another in the high street, you don't immediately lose all of the clothes that you bought in that store. You keep them and you can buy more in the new store, right? So again, this isn't possible. None of this is possible yet. The only way it could be possible easily would be through web-based virtual reality platforms, because they are, you don't need to then, move from one to the other and then stop and then download something. That's a major friction point. If you move from, for instance, an environment like this that we're in right now in Tokyo, and the system is set up at both ends in, let's say, Mozilla Hubs, which is another web-based virtual reality platform, then you would be able to move from one to the other. Now, your appearance might change slightly because the capabilities of something like Mozilla Hubs are graphically less than this virtual reality platform, which is based on a particularly beautiful and powerful 3D engine called Unreal. You would look a bit different, but you would be effectively the same person, the same character, or have the same goods and assets. And that's never been done. We will be doing it shortly from these two platforms, but that will be the first time it's ever been done. And that will be the very, very first stages of the metaverse. So I wouldn't say that the metaverse is dead. I would say it hasn't been born yet. We're getting there.
Yeah. I love it.
Okay,
Absolutely.
no problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, David, come sit down, and while we're sitting down, let's go ahead and let's turn on our cameras.
Now, I'm particularly excited about the fact that you can do that. Let's just see where the mine's up. Yeah, there we go. And I'll tell you why. One of the issues that we had when we were creating metaverses for education was when we were creating virtual reality platforms for education. There you go. That's me misusing the word already. But we were being asked by the teachers who we were creating it for their classrooms. They said, okay, this is great. We can have almost quasi-physical interactions. We can have group behavior in a way that you just can't do in something like Zoom or Teams or Google Meets. You know, it just doesn't really, it breaks down quite a lot when you try to do group activities, to the extent where teachers are also finding that people get exhausted in there. Zoom fatigue, they call it. 45 minutes is the maximum class length that any teacher who's got experience of it would use those before they know that they're going to lose the interest of their students. Now, when we did this in a virtual reality platform, we found that went up to about 3 hours or longer. And that was because people were in a more natural three-dimensional environment. And that is what we evolved for. Clearly, we're three-dimensional creatures. So having to translate things from 2D into 3D and back again, it's exhausting. It uses a big part of your brain, and it means that you get tired really quickly. So that's all very well. So you can have people doing group activity, moving around, going into school trips to the CERN Large Hadron Collider and engage, or watching a rocket taking off, all this cool stuff going to the bottom of the ocean. Fantastic. However, what did the teachers come back to us and say? They said, how do I know that my class is engaged? How do I know that they're paying attention? How do I know that I haven't lost them? Because people's avatars don't move around that much. Avatars being these virtual personas that we've got. And they said, can we see their faces? And I had to say, no, there's no way to see their faces. There's nobody who can do that yet. And then you guys did it. Right. Which is why I got all kind of excited, like an excited school child, because that is a major thing. Hand gestures is one major thing. So when you're in a virtual reality headset and it knows where your hands are, that can actually be really, really conducive to conversation, because people know and they can gauge your enthusiasm and its body language, and that's really important. But what's also terribly important is facial expressions as well. So what you've done here is to get the best of both worlds out of the likes of Zoom and Teams and so forth. You've got a spatial environment, it's three-dimensional, and yet at the same time we can see body language and we can see facial expressions, right down to the micro muscle movements that we don't even know that we're doing, that indicate whether we believe in what we're saying, that indicate whether we're enthusiastic or bored or engaged, or all the different emotions that we have, right? Now you can do it. And it's such a simple approach to it. I don't want to get too gushy on you guys, but I've been thinking about this for ages. How do we do it? Can we, for instance, project, do a face swap like you get in the face swap apps, where it will just cut out your face from your webcam and then it will just stick it on the front of the ovoid that is your head, that is your avatar. We tried it. It looked weird because, we all looked like kind of badly painted Easter eggs. It was very odd. And then we thought, okay, well, I know what we can do. We can use artificial intelligence to pick up on the topography, the contours and shapes of your face as you're talking, which we can. And that's great, but it's a sledgehammer to crack it up, because what did you guys go away and do? You just got a screen and stuck it where the head is, and it works. I love the simplicity of it.
Well, this kind of technology will continue to evolve, especially as talent moves into metaverse, right? Engineers moving into this space to solve problems. I'm sure we're going to see some really cool stuff in the future. And actually, while we're at it, let's go ahead and add our cams to the screen behind us. So there we go. There's David.
Now I can only see me.
That's okay. I'm gonna keep you up there then, okay. And we'll keep talking. So you've explained really beautifully what the metaverse is, what the metaverse isn't. Let me ask you another question that will probably send you off on a few minutes here. But why is the metaverse even important? why do we care when I can I can just walk to the store now, or I can use a browser to go to someone's website. Why do I care about the metaverse?
Right. Okay. Well, partially because studies have been done into how natural people feel in three-dimensional and immersive environments, and and the reasoning behind that, which I explained briefly. But the level of engagement, the level of presence, the level of memory of the events and confidence in what you've learned, so particularly for education, is 4 times higher. But so that's significant, right? 300% uptick. So that's pretty big, and that's from an independently commissioned study by PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they were using virtual reality environments versus normal physical classroom environments versus things like Zoom and Teams and that kind of thing, to teach soft skills, emotional skills. And that was pre being able to do this stuff with your screens and your videos. So things have moved fast, because that was just about a year ago that study was commissioned. So there's a level of engagement, there's a level of sense of realism, and other things. Being where you are, being where you're meant to be, is a lot better than looking at a picture of it. I discovered it. I started out my career in online communications. And my original background was in communication psychology and international sociological communications as well. And when the internet came along, it was great for allowing people from different geographic regions to be able to communicate with each other without the boundaries of distance and so forth. But it was mostly textual initially in the kind of late 90s when I got into the game. And that was fine, because there wasn't much choice. You could go in forums and tippy tap away and have big long form conversations with people. But as the connection speeds went up, as the investment, the personal investment into getting to a forum or getting to a website went down, because you weren't having to wait for ages for that to happen, and the options and choices expanded exponentially over years and years and years, people's attention spans online went down and down and down to the extent where they're now sub goldfish level at fractions of a second. And so therefore, if you're trying to communicate with people properly online, the expectation is a blast of information before you move on again, right? This doesn't really lend itself well to long-form interpersonal communication. So as I went through my career, I started to get into progressively more visual media as the connection speeds allowed for it. And, what's the old adage, a picture speaks 1,000 words? And that's fine. I started using more images and less text, and that worked really well. And of course, online, you can see how long people are interacting for and when they're dropping off. So that was, working beautifully. But then attention spans dropped even further until I had to get into video, and I ended up starting a company called Online Corporate Video Production. It's not a plug, because the company isn't running anymore. And so I shortened that to Encore Video, and that was what I did. If a picture speaks 1,000 words, a video speaks 1,000,000, right? Or infinite. And that was fine. But then attention spans went down even further, and you'll have seen this with the advent of micro video, sites like TikTok and this kind of thing. People will not stick around for long. So having a background in, communication psychology, evolutionary psychology, and so forth, I thought, well, what is the natural next step? What are we built for? It's all about trending. So we've gone from text to image to video. It has to be interaction, right? It has to be immersion. It has to be what we evolved for, what we do on an everyday basis, what we're born to do. And that is to be in a space with each other as social creatures. And that's why it's important, because that's what we evolved for. This is the natural, logical next step of the internet, of online communication. There's no getting away from it. It's just, of course it is. And we're going to look back on this, and it'll be like the move from black and white television to color, or so on.
Wow.
Other than that, you can use it for so many things that you just can't use conventional internet for. I mean, we've been using it in the offshore energy industry. So if you're in an offshore oil platform that's been repurposed for wind power or wave power, right? If you get that wrong, you can blow stuff up. You can fall off the edge. You can burn your hand off, or get yourself crushed in machinery. Okay. Right. If you don't know what to do when there's a fire, how are you going to get off, right? So let me give you an example. When you do go on an oil platform, what they do is they give you a little laminated card, and that laminated card has a kind of, here's what you do in an emergency, right? But they'll also obviously take you to your muster point. and they'll show you the nearest lifeboats that you can use to get off that oil platform. But that's fine. You're doing it in a group. You're doing it likely in the daytime. Maybe it's sunny. Maybe it's, when that actually happens, when that alarm goes off, where are you going to be? Are you necessarily going to be at that muster point? Is it going to be daytime? Is it going to be nighttime? Is there going to be explosions, rain, chaos, things falling down around you? You're not going to be prepared. Your route that you were shown that was beautifully short, that's going to take you to your lifeboat, might be blocked by a collapsed oil derrick or something like that. Okay, what are you going to do? Your laminated card isn't going to help you. Now, there's several theories, that this whole life flashing before your eyes when you get into dangerous situations is really just a kind of a simplified metaphor for your brain flicking through all the experiences that it can think of that were similar to the dangerous experience that you're having now that you survived. Okay, it's a survival mechanism, right? If you train for your emergency exit in virtual reality, you can train for every contingency. You can wake up or find yourself at any point and then have a certain amount of time to get the hell off without dying and with conditions changing around you. And when that really happens, God forbid it ever does, but if it did, your brain has something to pull back on. It remembers, it knows. And you've built the virtual reality experience based on the actual layer of that oil platform, the genuine roots. And that is going to save lives. And that is just one example. There's so many others that I can think of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I actually really love that example. It's a much more detailed example, like comparing looking at a map to actually using something like a GPS. Right, that actually guides you through it step by step, but this is like taking it a step further, like actually living it. They'll have memories of actually going through those corridors or whatever it might be. I love it.
Yes, it's still a great example, though, Jason. That's still that's going to happen to a lot more people than the example that I gave you.
Right. But it's different, right? I mean, gosh, I'm not even sure I could sit down and use a map properly now after having experienced what it's like to use like a proper GPS, And I mean, there was a time in my life where that was all there was a map, right? But if you asked me to use a map to get somewhere now, or even like a map quest, if anyone remembers that.
Yes, I do.
No, it's not the same. I'll get lost much easier that way. I love that.
A smartphone and it had a compass in it, and there was not yet, GPS on phones, and I was just blown away by the fact that it knew what direction I was facing, but accelerometers and interior compasses have really revolutionized things in a way that has been so subtle that maybe we haven't realized,
Absolutely. And you and I have had other conversations about VR in the past, and I think you've also given some examples in the medical community where VR is making a huge difference, for people, surgeons, etc.
Yes, that's actually a good point. Just earlier today, I was speaking to a healthcare technology company who are using MRI scans and CT scans, which normally just take slices of kind of interior views of your body or your bone structure, and then if you're a very highly qualified radiologist, you can work that out in 3 dimensions. But that is the premise of, or that's the remit of qualified radiologists. But there's other people that need to use that data who are not qualified radiologists. Even surgeons will think more in 3D than be able to convert 2D to 3D. Patients certainly are not going to be able to understand automatically what's going on in a few slices of the MRI scan. So this device, this system, turns it into what's called a volume, a 3D model. And then you can view that 3D model in virtual reality, in augmented reality. You can be guided around it by your consultant or your surgeon who says, look, here's the problem. Do you see that little lump there? That is a, let's say, tumor or benign tumor or something like that. We'll have to remove that. Here's what that's going to look like. The surgeon can plan their surgery. Even multiple surgeons in different countries can go, I've got a problem here. What do you think I should do next? And they do have those conversations. But in this way, they can be in their life planning the whole thing. And then using augmented reality, which is to say they can see the real world as well as the digital overlay. So they can overlay this onto the actual patient during surgery. And this has been used for brain surgery and so forth. They know what's going to happen before they even cut through the skin or the brain or the skull. They know what's going to be underneath there, so you don't get any false cuts. And you get in there, you know what to expect. You can get out again. I've had multiple internal surgeries, and your average person, when they've never had surgery before, a surgeon can fairly accurately predict where their organs are going to sit when they're lying down, because they generally sit in the same position. But I've had tons of stuff removed, right? So mine they don't know what they're going to get. It's all to play for. They could be looking for my spleen, and it's like hanging out with my liver, you know. And so this way they can actually do that prediction beforehand, and this can be done in. There are holographic displays, like real holographic displays, so you don't even need to use like headsets or anything like that for that. But another example, and you knew that was going to end up rabbiting on for a while in this one, but I was quite proud of myself. I did a medical paper for Springer journals on biomedical visualization, and it was the application of virtual reality for preparation for new environments for people on the autistic spectrum. Now, this is an issue for people. Yeah, people with autism tend to struggle to adjust to new environments, yeah, which is why they can quite frequently fall into pattern behavior. Things that are familiar will calm them, as they will with all of us. But if you tend to get overwhelmed by lots and lots of new information, then you're going to be more likely to just stick to the patterns that you're comfortable with, right? So that can create issues when it comes to having the incentive and the motivation against fear response to go somewhere new. Or when you do go somewhere new, it can be so overwhelming, just too much going on, sights, smells, sounds, sensations, that you can't enjoy it. It gets completely too much, you know. So concept, and I'm not going to say I came up with it because I didn't. It was a guy called Craig Denham in Australia came up with the idea and related it to me over a conversation, was that you could scan an area really easily. There's very cheap software and hardware that you can do with your phone, and create then as your person with on the autistic spectrum, visit it before you ever go there physically. So we can also remove extraneous information. So you could remove all the people, you could remove all the sounds, you could remove all the movement, and then the person with on the autistic spectrum can go and visit it first off, see it, familiarize themselves with it, and even gradually reintroduce or gradually introduce people, sounds, etc. So that by the time they actually go there physically, they've already got the pattern in their head. The overwhelm isn't there. It's more like it would be to you and I visiting the place for the first time, opening up a whole bunch of new opportunities to go to places that otherwise would have been too uncomfortable to go to.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to move the conversation somewhere because we're running out of time, because I think we're creeping up on, I think, the full half hour that we normally schedule for. But I could talk to you for hours on this, and I could, if I let you, I know you could talk for hours on this. Days, that's right. That's days. You know, we chose a controversial, title for this session to kick off this series for a reason, right? Because we at BizzTalk, we believe in the metaverse in a big way, right? We believe the future of our business is in the metaverse, and we're big believers, big supporters. You as well. For those who are skeptical about the concept of the metaverse, or for those who think that maybe the metaverse is just some side project that Facebook is trying to do with their spare time, what would you say to those people to help them kind of understand why they need to learn a bit more and be a bit more flexible in their mindset when it comes to the metaverse?
Well, I don't think that they do. Certain things are highly likely to develop, and they'll develop over time. And mass adoption will occur, as it always does. You'll get your early adopters, and we are, and likely the majority of the people watching this are early adopters or are interested at the start. And then as time goes on and there's more media about it and more people are trying it, more people will adopt. Many of us who are in our 30s or 40s can probably remember when mobile phones weren't a thing. And they can possibly also remember saying things like, I'll never have a mobile phone, or I'll never go on Facebook, or I'll not, and then over time it just kind of happens. So I don't think that we should place an onus on anybody to become an early adopter before they're ready. If you're interested, or if you find the concept in any way interesting, then yeah, have a look at it. But otherwise, just let it happen. It will. I mean, I know I would say this, but it seems highly likely that it will happen. It will become a very, very big part of our lives, just like the internet did, just like mobile phones and smartphones did, just like color television did. And at every point that there's been a communications change, paradigm shift, everything from the written word through to the printing press, through to Marconi inventing the radio, television, the computers, the internet, etc. Most people have said they'll never take off. Cars,
that's right.
It'll never take off. And but when you think about it, it's kind of logical that it will, and it's probably not even as big technologically a shift forward than any of the examples that I just mentioned. But I think it will really help us in terms of learning, in terms of immersion, in terms of proper full body communication, much which is non-verbal. And I think it's probably just like the mouse was, and the Windows interface made computers much more accessible to far more people. This is just a new form of interface, which should hopefully make it much more natural to behave in the connected world.
Absolutely. And would you give a similar advice to businesses that are trying to learn a little bit more about the metaverse, or would you encourage them to try to understand it now, or to see how things play out? What would you tell them?
With businesses, your advantage is always in being a little bit ahead. Not too far ahead, but a little bit ahead. And I deal with businesses a lot. So depending on your business, if your business requires people to communicate at a distance, if your business involves any kind of risk or any kind of risky behavior or risky, environments, that kind of thing, then it's worth looking at. And what to do is just look at the early adopters, see what they've done. Because people will be studying that, people will be calculating the cost benefits. I mean, we think about the flat screen television that we've all got in our houses. That only happened because the cost benefit between having a normal monitor, which was long, versus the cost per square foot of office space was higher, right? And as a result of that, people invested in it, right? So if it bears out in terms of savings or increased profit, then it will be adopted by business, and it'll be adopted by different businesses at different rates. At the moment, it's your big ticket, things like energy and construction and mining, things like that, were the early adopters. But also, maybe as a lower risk means of entry, try it for training. There's a lot of training, really accessible. You can do it not necessarily in a VR headset, although you can get those for 300 quid now, and they're ready to go. But you can also do it on phones, tablets, computers, right? That kind of 3D training can be a lot more effective, and it can give you it can get you and your employees a gentle, low-risk introduction into using this technology. And you should, if PricewaterhouseCoopers studies were correct, which they were pretty comprehensive, you should get better results from your training. And that might give you and your employees more ideas for how you can maybe adopt this and use it in an operational sense rather than purely a training sense. We are tending to find that most organizations that come to us at the moment, to my organization at the moment, for VR, they start off with training and then they inevitably move on to operations because it gives them the familiarity that they need to really get their teeth into it.
Wow, I love that. Great advice, David. David, I think you're definitely in my top 2 favorite people to talk to about this kind of stuff. So
top 2? Who's the other one? I'm offended.
Well, I mean, maybe Dirk.
Okay, I'll give you that.
But yeah, seriously, I absolutely love it. When in this series, we're going to keep this series going. We'll do it a couple times a month. Definitely have you back again because there's so much more to discuss, and I'm looking forward to our next chat together. But thanks for joining me today, David. This was fun. This was cool.
Thanks for having me for my very first interview in the virtual reality world. I'm super pleased. Maybe next time we'll be doing it in the actual metaverse.
Yeah, there you go. That'll be fun. To our audience, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.